The United States has imposed sanctions on the Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif. However, Zarif said that these sanctions will not have any impact on him because he has no properties or interest outside Iran. U.S. Treasury Secretary said that Zarif implemented the reckless agenda of Iran's supreme leader. U.S. designated Zarif because he was the country's primary spokesperson around the world. He said the sanctions were a message to Iran that its recent behavior was not acceptable. Now, trade talks between U.S. and China have concluded in Shanghai. This round of negotiations between the U.S. Trade Representative and Chinese Vice Premier ended with an agreement to hold another meeting in September. The world's two largest economies have been slapping each other with billion-dollar tariffs and disrupting global markets. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is likely to have a pull-aside with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on the sidelines of East Asia Summit Foreign Ministers meet in Bangkok. Jaishankar will be in Bangkok from 1st to 2nd August and will also participate in ASEAN-India Ministerial Meeting and 10th Mekong-Ganga Cooperation Ministerial Meeting. The meet is the first high-level meet between U.S. and Indian side since remarks by U.S. President Donald Trump on Kashmir. The United States Federal Reserve has cut interest rates for the first time since 2008, citing concerns about the global economy and domestic inflation. The central bank also signaled a readiness to lower borrowing costs further. The Fed said the rate cut should help return inflation to its 2% target, but that uncertainties about that outlook still remain. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi addressed Ghana's parliament on the 400th anniversary of the first enslaved Africans to arrive in America. With this, she became the first female U.S. House Speaker to address the parliament. She gave reassurance about the friendship between the two nations. Pelosi also praised Ghana for stabilizing the continent through democracy and security. She referred to it as a ray of hope for fighting discrimination. She is in Ghana for a 4-day visit. Israel has announced that it will build 6,000 new homes for Jewish settlers in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian leaders have referred to it as Israel's colonial mentality. However, in a rare move, Israel also announced 700 homes for Palestinians as well. This comes ahead of a visit by the U.S. President Donald Trump's Middle East envoy, Jared Kushner. The detailed plan of his visit is yet to be known. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un oversaw the first test firing of a new type large-caliber multiple-launch guided rocket system. North Korean media reported that the test verified the combat effectiveness of the overall system. The report comes a day after the South Korean military said North Korea fired at least 2 missiles. Wednesday's launches were from the Wonsan area on North Korea's eastern coast. The African Union has called for a speedy trial in an incident that killed 4 school children in a rally in west of Sudan. After the killing, the Sudanese military ordered a nationwide shutdown of schools. Hundreds of children dressed in school uniforms took to the streets of Khartoum in demonstrations against the deaths. The unions also asked the ruling military council and opposition coalition to sign a constitutional declaration which has been halted for weeks now. An unmanned Russian spaceship was launched from the country's space complex in Kazakhstan. It was carrying about 3 tons of food, fuel and supplies for the International Space Station. 6 astronauts were aboard the ship. The Progress 73 resupply ship blasted off atop a Soyuz rocket. It is to dock with the ISS about 3.5 hours later after 2 orbits.
Everything looking good so far. Those 4 strap-on boosters providing the initial lift of the vehicle will burn for 1 minute 58 seconds.
More than 1,000 people in Bangladesh, the majority of whom are children, have been diagnosed with dengue in the last 24 hours. This is the country's worst ever dengue fever outbreak. The outbreak has put a severe strain on the country's already overwhelmed medical system. As hospitals are flooded with patients, more than 50 districts have been affected by the disease. Dhaka has been the worst hit city in the country. Officials are still struggling to contain the outbreak, drawing criticism and spreading panic among some residents. A massive manhunt is underway in the Canadian city of Manitoba as police look for two teenagers charged with the killing of a university lecturer. The duo is also suspected of murdering two tourists, and the manhunt has been going on for over a week, crossing 3,000 kilometers from the crime scenes in British Columbia to Manitoba. Families in Brazil began burying the victims of the deadly prison riot which took place earlier this week. Dozens of new graves were being dug on Wednesday for the burial. 57 people were killed in the bloody riots at the Altamira jail in Para State on 29th of July. For years now, Brazil has struggled to contain prison violence. Prisons are overcrowded, the staffing is short, and rival gangs often clash with each other. There's a new addition to the list of probables for Puerto Rico's governor's post. Outgoing Governor Ricardo Rossello has formally nominated Pedro Pierluisi as the Secretary of State. If confirmed by lawmakers, he would take over from Rossello. Pierluisi is the island's former non-voting representative at the U.S. Congress. His candidature is being opposed, citing his advisory role in the containment process of the country's bankruptcy. The race for the top job is on, with Rossello resigning on August 2nd amidst mass protests. A UN spokesperson has confirmed that the second person diagnosed with Ebola in Goma died early on Wednesday. Meanwhile, a third case of Ebola has been reported in Congo's Goma city. The UN spokesperson has informed that there's surveillance at all entry points and more health workers are being deployed in Congo. He has also urged the global community to strengthen its response to Ebola. UN's reaction comes a day before the African nation marks a year of the deadly Ebola outbreak, which had killed over 7,100 people. An explosion rocked the EXXON Corporation's refining and chemical plant in TYPHOON in Texas yesterday. The resultant fire affected the unit, having a light hydrocarbon mixture of propane and propylene. At least 37 people were injured in the fire, though none were reported serious. The fire sent huge plumes of smoke and forced the Baytown area's residents into their homes. The fire was later put under control by the firefighters and the company employees. The cause of the incident still remains unknown.
Really know what happened. We did have a loss.
An explosion at a house in western Pennsylvania has injured many people. A gas leak is being suspected as the cause of the explosion. Emergency workers were rushed to the accident site. There has been no immediate word on the number of those injured. The Russian military has joined the efforts to fight forest fires that have engulfed Siberia and the Russian Far East. Nearly 30,000 square kilometers have already been impacted by the fires. The smoke has reportedly crossed into Mongolia. However, no injuries or evacuations have been reported so far. The Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered sending military transport planes and helicopters to drop water. Chinese province of Henan has been hit with the typhoon WIPHA, the 7th this year. The typhoon made a landfall on the coastal province earlier this morning. It stormed in with a maximum sustained wind speed of up to 85 kilometers per hour. Immediate impacts of the landfall are yet to be known. The Indian government is considering directly taxing big tech companies over the profits that they earn locally. The centre is mulling a revenue threshold of 20 crore rupees and a user base of at least 500,000 users, above which non-resident tech companies such as Google, Facebook and Twitter would have to pay direct taxes to the government on the locally earned profits. The significant economic presence will levy a tax of around 35% on big tech companies, which is similar to the tax paid by the local firms. Chinese movie legend Jackie Chan has called for improved working conditions and recognition for stuntmen in a television interview. His remarks came after the closure of the 5th Jackie Chan International Action Film Week in China. Chan highlighted that reason why started a Stuntman Association was to let the industry pay more attention to the problems that stuntmen face. He said that there was a long way to go before their insurance and industrial standards could be raised. The Iowa police have released a dramatic video. The video shows officers rescuing 2 people from the turbulent waters of the Des Moines River. The 2 were caught in the raging waters after their raft had capsized. Police officers responded to their calls of help and pulled them to safety. Both were then treated at the hospital and later discharged.
Come on, kick, you're good. Come on. Relax. Ma'am, use both hands. Grab it. Both let me pull. Come on. Get your head up. You got it.
Dozens of fishermen and volunteers in Peru scrambled to save a beached humpback whale who was entangled in fishing nets and dragged to shore by sea currents. Volunteers tried in vain to push the whale back into sea using ropes. The Peruvian Coast Guard has joined the effort, but the mammal is yet to be returned to sea.